Hello and welcome. This is the channel where we talk everything Camino. I'm Camino Candace and I'm eternally Camino dreaming. Today is part 4 of the logistics series, and we will be going over how to determine the time of year to travel for your Camino. There's a lot of different factors to consider, so we're just going to go over those and see what comes up in terms of stories today. So the number one thing is usually weather consideration, although it's never guaranteed to be perfect. As I've said on previous videos, you will have one day for sure of rain, regardless of when you go. When I say weather, I'm not talking about rain. I'm actually also talking about heat and sunshine. I'm talking about snow. If you're going through the Française route, the Napoleon route from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port to Roncesvalles is closed November through beginning to mid-April, and then it can fluctuate whether it's open or closed even through April and May based on snowstorms that make the route and that passage quite dangerous actually to walk. In which case the Valcarlos route is the route that you would take. Now, how do you know this? The pilgrims office in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port will tell you. And here's a very good rule of thumb, regardless of what Camino you're on or where on that Camino you are. If the pilgrims office, locals, the tourist office, if there's any information from people who live and know this route well, and they say, do not travel here, listen to them. There's a reason. Okay. Now, last year, there was a lot of fires through Spain and Portugal. And I know for sure in Portugal, it actually affected the Camino, and authorities did reroute that. Okay. Because, well, why would you walk through a forest fire? I don't think anyone did, but it's just an example, right? So when there's detours set up by the authorities, you follow that. They can even do that when it comes to flooding, which maybe that's a possibility this year based on the extensive forest fire damage from last year. But keep alert. You'll hear either directly through news or through other pilgrims, or even when you arrive at the different albergues, they will generally have information for you. So considering that, obviously temperature goes hand in hand with weather. The European summers can be quite warm, and it's not like North America where there's a lot of air conditioning, okay? And, if you're doing the Française, there is the Meseta, which we talked about in a previous video. And it's essentially 2 weeks or so of walking through flat land, not a lot of trees. So there's a lot of very direct sunshine. And when I did that, I was walking through the Meseta. I think it was like the last week and a half of September, first part of October. And it was still hot. It was still hitting like 30, 33 degrees Celsius on those days. And I was still wearing like 50 SPF and still getting a tan. So I think that kind of tells you how hot it can be. That's also why we talked about electrolytes in a previous video as well. So you need to consider, how does your body handle temperatures like that? And if that's what it was at the end of September, imagine how hot it could be in July or August. Are you physically prepared for that? Are you mentally, emotionally prepared for that? Especially if it's not the norm for you to be living in a climate like that. I know I personally would seriously struggle with like a July, August Française. I mean, don't get me wrong, the sunshine would be fabulous. It's just that level of heat, okay? Health conditions will play a factor in, do you go in summer versus winter? In wintertime, there's more precipitation that can turn into snow in the higher elevations, as we've already discussed along the Napoleon path to Roncesvalles, even when you get up to the border of Galicia. Now, that I had arrived first week of October. And I remember it was like just before Canadian Thanksgiving, and it was hot and I was sweating buckets, and there's like the cement marker that everyone like takes a picture at. It's a great photo op. It's a beautiful marker. And not even 2 weeks later, I'm seeing pictures on the forums. They had snow. Okay. So when you start to get into the changes of season, this is also going to affect the type of clothing you bring. Obviously, if you're going more through summer time, it's mostly going to be shirts and shorts, obviously like a pair of pants and a sweater for sure. Maybe a few other things, because it does tend to get quite cold at night, even though it can be very hot during the day. So if you're someone who runs a little colder at night like I do, you'll need more warmth to keep you going. And then in terms of winter time, if you are going through snow, you could be looking at like minus temperatures, a lot of cold winds. What kind of clothing do you have to keep you warm and to keep you dry in that? Because that can turn dangerous very quickly. If something happens, obviously it'll be much colder at night, and not all places will have central heat. Okay, so that's going to change what you bring to sleep with. A lot of us carry a sleeping bag liner. I know for myself, I carry a silk one. It's very lightweight. It's good enough for, summertime, but as the temperature changes, I found for me, it wasn't warm enough. Even when I wore my merino wool leggings and a long sleeve top to bed, but that's because I run cold. So when I did my Lisboa to Fatima, I actually bought an emergency sleeping bag. It's lightweight, but is lined with the reflective heat panels. And I actually slid it inside my sleeping bag liner and I slept like that. And I mean, it was January, so it was a lot more cold than the October I experienced on Frances. And Portugal is actually quite humid, which I was not expecting. I mean, I literally some nights slept in my thermal icebreaker leggings, my wool socks, a long sleeve shirt, a sweater, my thermal vest, and a toque. Okay. For those who don't know what a toque is basically a hat that covers your ears. And that with the sleeping bag, like I was just warm enough. And there was still one albergue where I actually also, on top of all of that, slept with 2 blankets. So that's just to kind of give you an idea. Now, it was only at that albergue that I ran into other pilgrims. And over 2 nights there were 3 Italians and 1 Austrian. And the Italians were all men. None of them needed blankets. I think men generally run a little hotter, but the Austrian woman, she did need a blanket or 2 herself. So just kind of keep that in mind, because, even though you can still get lightweight, quick dry, wicking wool clothing, which is probably ideal more for winter because cotton takes forever to dry. It does not temperature regulate for you. It still all adds weight to your pack. So that's another thing you need to consider. The ideal weight for a backpack is 10% of your body weight, which, yes, that's like super ideal, but that also includes water. My backpack is amazing. I love it. I actually bought a second one just like it because that particular model the company wasn't making, and I found a brand new one on a discount website. So I bought that. It's what I'm going to be bringing this year because I have to get my other one repaired. And the backpack itself, because it has a wireframe structure, comes to about 3.5 pounds. And, that's essentially like the weight of my Camelback filled with water, just maybe a little under that. So that's why when my pack is packed with a full Camelback, which is 1.5 liters, yeah, because I drink a lot of water. Plus, I have a lightweight collapsible water bottle from Life Straw. That's 1 liter. So I carry 2.5 liters of water with me at all times because I personally need a lot of hydration. And then also, if I for some reason miss a place where I can fill up, I usually have a spare that if my Camelback runs out, I can transfer from my water bottle to the Camelback and know that I should still be able to get through. There were a couple times where I think one time I ran out of water for sure. And when I was on the Fatima route, fortunately, I only had like 20 minutes left to go. So that was okay. And it wasn't summer. In the Française, I think there was a couple times I was pretty close, and that would have been real bad. So, I was always around other people, so I could have always asked for water if I needed it. I just fortunately didn't have to do that. So, even if you think you're fine and you come across a water fountain, I would say preemptively top up as a just in case, because there's a lot of things that could happen along the route. Okay, so when it comes to the weight you carry, yes, 10% of your body weight is ideal. I think most people actually carry more than that. So for me, I'd be looking at 15 pounds, but I'm typically carrying like 22 with water, maybe a little more depending on the amount of food I have to put in my backpack. So, I can handle 20, no problem. 15 would definitely make life easier. And yet I can get my pack to about 17 and a half without water. So all the extra weight is mostly water on my end. So if you're not capable of that, that's okay. You can still do your Camino. That's what luggage transfer is for. Okay. The one thing about luggage transfer is you still need to carry like a day pack with you, which should have all your essentials, because it does happen where your bag might not actually arrive. And I saw quite a few people on Française who had put their luggage through in the morning, arrived to where they were getting at night, and their bags didn't arrive. And as far as I know, everyone eventually got their bag, but it was usually the next day. And so if you have things like medication or contact lens stuff and glasses that you need to carry that on you, as well as, obviously like your passport, your credential, your cash, stuff like that. Okay. Another factor in deciding time of year is cost of flights. Obviously, peak travel times like summer. So, May is probably okay, but definitely like getting to June, July, August, and first part of September, that's when a lot of people globally travel, and even locals. So keep that in mind. It does increase costs. Holidays also increase costs. That's why it's always advisable to even check what the list of holidays are for Spain or Portugal when you're traveling. And if you're okay with paying more for a place to stay when you hit bigger cities, awesome. I found that when I was on Française, it seemed like every time I got to a major city, it was on a weekend and there was a festival. Although to be fair, they seem to have a lot of festivals and stuff in Spain. So, at a certain point, it was just okay, try to avoid it, either slow down or just go a little further ahead and try to avoid that. The bigger cities, yes, I booked Airbnbs. They usually had laundry, washing machines that I could use. I personally carried my own type of travel laundry soap, so that wasn't an issue. But you can always use, laundromats. It's just really convenient when it's at your Airbnb, and then you're not paying the extra washer and dryer fees that you would at an albergue. Plus, we have stuff like merino, and yes, these are clothes that I did wear on both my Caminos. You're not typically supposed to use fabric softener. And when you use the washing machines at albergues, they all have automatic soap with fabric softener dispensers. So the problem is this fabric softener can clog the pores of the fabric, which decreases its ability to wick properly for sweat, and it can also block the pores, and then you can gain odor with it. So I just kind of had to bite the bullet a few times. So these will probably come with me again. This shirt was actually brand new when I bought it for Camino. I got it on sale. I don't buy anything Icebreaker unless it's on sale because it's crazy expensive. But it's lightweight, temperature regulates. By the time I was done Camino, like the collar was like dirty and gray. It still kind of is. So I just use it for like when I walk to and from work, that sort of stuff, because I'll sweat and then I don't ruin my work clothes type of thing. But it's held up pretty good. It's gone into the dryer several times on Camino. There's a couple small holes, but they seem to be okay. I mean, you don't need brand new perfect clothes. The other benefit is it's super lightweight, so it didn't take up a lot of room and didn't add a lot of weight to my pack. Okay. Trains are the same as flights, depending on the day of the week, the time of day you're traveling. They'll be more expensive. The further in advance you book a train, the cheaper it'll be. Most trains, the schedule will be available 3 months in advance, sometimes more than that. But if you're more than 3 months out from when you're planning to travel and it says like there's nothing available, that's usually just because the schedule hasn't gone up. So you have to look closer too. All right. The other thing to factor in is crowds. Do you want to walk with a lot of other pilgrims or not? In part, this will also influence the route that you're traveling. The Française is very easy to walk in terms of infrastructure for places to stay, places to eat, that sort of thing. It's very popular. There are a lot of pilgrims. There's also a lot of what they call touragrinos, the people who pay a tour company to walk them along Camino. And then they also tend to take up a lot of the albergues or hotels, which, personal opinion, I think that's kind of lame. I mean, if you want to go with the tour company, whatever. I think it's really unfair that the tour companies book the albergues, is my point. They should be booking hotels and places that other pilgrims wouldn't stay in order to leave those spaces for the rest of us who are going on our own and, you know, just kind of walking day by day. And I am not the only one who feels that way. So that's my personal opinion. And I understand there's reasons why people go, but I will tell you, for those who are watching this who've gone with tour companies, because, you know, like you probably didn't know what the logistics were to walk, like you're being charged a hell of a lot more than to just pick up and go on your own. Plus, when you have your tour booked with those companies, you don't get a rest day. So if something happens and you get injured or you're just tired or something, you have to catch up with the group. And I mean, whatever, to each their own, but you know, there's something to be said for having a bit more flexibility. And, you know, just because you start alone, trust me, you will not finish alone. I'm going to go into the friends I've made on Camino on another video. You will not be alone unless you choose to be alone. Okay, so don't even like worry about that. And even when I did Lisbon to Fatima, the first day out of Lisbon, I only saw locals who were running or cycling along Camino. Otherwise, I literally didn't see any pilgrims until my third night when I was in Azambuja. I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't know, so pardon me. And when Gary from Italy showed up and I met him, he left the next day. And then Ricardo and Stefano from Italy and Nadine from Austria showed up. I met them. Otherwise, I was literally walking alone. The next day after those three arrived, we all left at different times, and Ricardo and Stefano caught up with me in Villada, the last town to get food or water before you head on to Santarém. So we had some lunch together, and then we walked on until I got to where I was staying. They were so fun. They wanted me to keep going with them to Santarem because they decided they would keep going, but I just needed to rest, and I was very excited to stay where I was staying at. It's called Casa Arias. I have to double check it. It's hosted by Nuno. He's awesome. He has like this little farm. He's got his 2 dogs. There's like horses, orange trees, olive trees. He's a very good cook. And like half of his house has been converted into albergue for pilgrims. He has like a nice wood stove that Nadine and I were able to wash clothes and then hang dry. And it was very lovely. So they wanted me to go with them, but I decided to stay. And then Nadine showed up later on, so that was cool. And, you know, I kept in touch with the 2 of them as they went on to Fatima. They checked in on me. I asked where they stayed, you know, so you make friends like that who can kind of help you out if they get ahead of you, you know, or you get ahead of them. And eventually you might meet up depending on what's what. I did not see them again, unfortunately, because I ended at Fatima. And I was staying an extra day in Fatima. Otherwise, I would have taken a bus to Tomar to go spend the day with them before they continued on. But, you know, you never know what the Camino will bring. I might see them again. Who knows? But yeah, so never worry about if you're walking alone. Most of my days were actually alone. And I mean, like, no one else was actually around. And it was great. Yeah, you do have to consider, like, maybe there's like some terrain that it would be nice if there were other pilgrims to come along just in case something happened, but you just slow down, you take your time, that sort of thing. And then finally going through, how does your body do in the different types of weather? You know, I found the winter Camino to be not too bad, and I'll go finish that at some point. When I get to that, it's not my upcoming one. And I've kind of figured, you know, because I started in winter, I think I'll finish it in winter. And although there will be a higher chance of rain, there is just like a totally different vibe. And, you know, each Camino is different. Even if you walked the same route several times, it's going to be different, especially if you go at different times of year. And even if you go at the same time of year, it's not going to be the same experience every time. So these are a lot of the things to consider. You know, it also depends on when can you get time off from work, depending on your career, like what's a busy time for you, when's a slow time, family obligations, all that sort of stuff. So take that into consideration, and then, yeah, just have fun planning and don't be afraid to check out the different seasons. So you won't regret it. You might have some rough days, especially if it's a highly rainy season, and yet the Camino always provides, and that does include the weather that you get. Just FYI, okay? It's not always what we want from the Camino, but we always get what we need, okay? So in the meantime, like, subscribe, share. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that helped. And until next time, Buen Camino.